this with our sound, we want to go like this on whatever instrument we're playing, you know. On the flute, it's a whole nother, that I don't understand, it's a whole nother set of rules, because there is no reed, right? But it goes to show you that there doesn't need vibration of the lips. That does not happen and need to make sound, because they can do it by blowing over the top of the hole and make sound. The saxophone can do it by blowing between a reed and the top of a mouthpiece. The reed vibrates. An oboe, you blow air between two reeds, and the reeds vibrate on a cushion of air. Trumpet players and brass players, we're all taught to go like this. And like, actually, they'd be like smashing the top of the clarinet reed at the top of the mouthpiece, and then trying to play, and you know what that would sound like, right? You need to have that space. But we're all taught this way, and it's kind of like 100-year-old, 120-year-old thinking that we do this when we play. All of us were taught to do that first, right? Every brass player in here, they gave us the mouthpiece, they say go, right? They'll buzz the mouthpiece, and that's how we're taught to make sound as young children, right? But if you think about that, or listen to it, even better yet. Does that sound like a pretty good buzz, trumpet players? Like a pretty good sounding buzz, right? Beginners sound like that because we're telling them to go. Right, so now we're amplifying this sound, which sounds horrible, so why would we want to amplify that? What actually happens is we get, as brass players, when we blow air between the lips, it sets up a standing wave inside the instrument. Like if you listen to this, notes are already in there. You don't need to put them in there. The notes are in the instrument already. You need to create a standing wave, and you blow air past the lips. They spin in the mouthpiece. That's why there's no air coming out of the bell. There's no, you can put a candle in front of this. There's no air coming out. It's just a vibration, right, that the horn is setting up. So, but we don't want to make the vibration first. We want this to happen. That's a better sound, right? Not starting until I add resistance of the instrument, right? So a lot of beginning trumpet players and beginning brass players are going, and they're trying to play a high G or something by buzz. Like I can't buzz. If we were buzzing to make sound, I should be able to buzz. Because I have to get smaller on this to make it go higher, because this won't resonate, because it's a hunk of metal, right? So how am I playing those notes? I'm not buzzing. The instrument has to be doing something. Right? The instrument is doing something. I'm not buzzing those notes. So it just sounds kind of a good thing to keep in mind. So when you're practicing, I don't want it to screw you up, but I want you to think about resonating sound as opposed to buzzing sound for your brass players. French horns and trumpets especially. And we have, French horn and trumpet are probably, not to take anything away from any of these instruments, physically probably the most demanding because of the resistance, right, and the size of the mouthpiece. We have very little room for air, but we have this little small target right here. And French horn especially, because you guys and gals, it's twice the length of the trumpet. So the notes are even closer together, so the chances of missing something become a lot greater. So I'm giving this our excuse. That's why we miss more notes. Just harder, sorry. Right? So, but we have to, that's why we have to warm up more. Trumpet play, that's why we have to take time and play soft and do long tones. Because where other instruments, the saxophone, you've got to use all 10 fingers. You've got a whole other set of problems, right? Right? But I could pick up the saxophone right now and I can make a sound. It's easier to make sound on a saxophone, right? Other things are more difficult. So all these instruments have their problems. Like I can hit the piano, I can play the piano right now, and I have the best sound as any piano player. You instantly get sound. So something you get on the piano, you don't have to think about sound. Trumpet, violin, French horn, oboe. A lot of people give up at an early age, because the sound is so bad for beginners. And that's why trumpet players end up giving up, because it ends up sounding bad. But a lot of us were taught incorrectly, like I was showing you two. We get that. Who doesn't want to give up after a couple of weeks of that? It's like, no, I don't want to do this anymore, On the flute, a whole other set of problems that I don't understand. I was just talking to them about this, because there's no vibration. You're creating a standing wave by blowing over the top of the hole, right? When you want to get softer, though, what do? Like a softer phrase.
Kind of like pull your lips a little like apart.
And that brings this together a little bit, right? So this gets a little smaller for softer, just like what we do. So there are some similarities with, or vocalists do the same thing. They when they go higher, they make the air column smaller. So that's probably what you all do as well. When you want to get louder, you blow harder, obviously, too, and then you open this up a little bit so there's more air. But if you tried to play soft with this really wide open, you would probably just get this fuzzy sound, right? Like a fuzzy, airy kind of flute sound, which is okay, too. And so you hear jazz trumpet players. Does anybody know who Chet Baker is? Trumpet player?
Oh, of course.
So Chet Baker, was a jazz trumpet player, and he sounded like this. Now, there's no classical trumpet teacher in the world will say, oh, that's a great sound. We want as much air and fuzz in your sound as you can get. But in jazz, that's a very cool sound.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to hear, Mahler 5 with that sound, or any classical piece. But for that kind of thing, and with that, the way you make that sound is by having the aperture a little bit too big and not enough air. Right, so you're not airballing, but you're letting that air and that spitty sound in. And Louis Armstrong and a lot of great trumpet players over the years, you hear them with that dirt and that air in their sound. You hear this buzzy sound. I'm humming while I'm playing. A lot of jazz musicians. Many jazz musicians come from an untrained place. They come from a place where maybe somebody bought them a horn and they learned to play by ear. Louis Armstrong learned to play on his own. So he had all these funny sounds in his sound that have become the sound of jazz, it turns out, So that kind of like... Right, that sound, you hear this gritty, dirty, funky sound. Once you get your classical teacher would go, no, what are you doing? Why would you play like that? We're not going to play this music like that. But there's different things you would play that way. So when somebody asks me on a movie session or something, hey, Wayne, we need this thing to sound like it's from 1942. Well, that's how players played back then, with that kind of vibrato. And some dirt and some air in there. But if I can't clear that up, if I don't know how to fix that sound, and then I'm in concert band and I start playing like that, the director's me going, okay, you're fired, goodbye, So, but understanding how to make those kind of sounds, is kind of fun.